memorized it once in 5 minutes doesn't mean it sticks tomorrow or sticks at the next tournament. So a quick review of the new content just gets it fresh. It gets it into that recall part of the brain so that they know it, and they know it well, and they know it backward and forward, and we'll talk about that. So what does memorization look like in our home? First, we introduce the verse. We go over we read it to them basically. Okay. Now that may not apply to your senior quizzer, but tell the senior quizzer, read it first before you ever go to memorize it. Look at what it is that you're going to memorize. So we introduce the verse. May talk about any weird words that might be there, or whatever it might be. And we know there are some words that my 7-year-old last year, now 8, like, what does that mean? So that happens. But introduce the verse. Talk about it. Then memorize. Memorization. The methods, the approach to memorization is going to vary child by child. Brother Lytle mentioned that we have a 4-year-old son involved. Our 4-year-old Jackson, he's a pistol. He's full of energy. He's very into sports, loves being on the move, on the go. Sitting down and memorizing a verse and just reciting it doesn't work for him. So we've got to find other ways to work with our son. Like I said, every kid is different. Every kid is different. Our youngest daughter, our third child, our daughter, who is 2, she's about to start this year at least a little bit of memorization as she turns 3 in November. She's going to be different. Every kid is different. And so I listed some of the methods that we either use, that we've used in the past, and even some combinations that we've used. I don't know if you're familiar with the songs that are produced, the songs that they do for every verse. I can't remember the group that does it, but I know that they're provided on the Brother Powers information, what's out there, okay, so we can get that if you don't have that already. But the sing-along stuff works, you know why? Because you're in the car a lot. We have about a 20-minute drive to and from church. We live up north in Delaware. We do a lot of stuff down in Dublin and Columbus, so that time in the vehicle where you can just pop a CD in or whatever device you have to listen to music on and just get it going in their head and sing along to it, that might work for some of your kids. The coloring book, they started putting that out I think last year, maybe the year before. We got a hold of that. So the coloring book, which just puts some visual aids with the verse, and then as a reward, Jackson gets to color the verse afterwards. So they memorize with some pictures, which I don't know, in school, we had different types of learners, right? You have those that respond to the visual aids very well, or hands-on type of stuff, or just simply reciting it over and over and over, right? So the coloring book will put some visual aids to it. I wouldn't be too afraid of, even if you have a senior Bible quizzer that is a visual learner, the pictures on that can help. Yeah, it might be kind of, make them feel a little demeaning to have to color a picture, but the pictures themselves as a visual aid to help learn would be a fantastic tool. We have extreme sensory memorization. What is that? My wife came up with this last year with Jackson. She actually posted a picture of it. I was at work. She sent it to me, and it had Jackson with these headphones on and the coloring book. So he was listening to the song while looking at the coloring book and following along. So extreme sensory memorization, both of those simultaneously. Building a verse. That's kind of breaking it down into chunks, probably one of the most common ways. When Aiden was 3 and he first started memorizing, we would do chunks with him. So we would do 3 to 4 words, or punctuation to punctuation, and just reciting it over and over and over. How many times over and over? Yeah, whatever works. We did about 4 or 5 times over each chunk. I know that Brother Ryan O'Neill has some material out there on the Senior Bible Quizzing website under their resources portion. And so he has other tips to things like that, building the verse, chunking a verse. So that's one way. There's a BQ Learn app that I know that Sister Wilson puts out. And that has become a real important part of Aiden's memorization. He reads well now, and again, that's another little testament to Bible quizzing. So if you're a junior quiz coach and you're trying to get some more parents interested and get those 4 and 5-year-old kids started, their reading will be light years ahead because of Bible quizzing. Light years ahead. Not to boast on Aiden, but this is an example. Because it's all I have is an example as a father. He's reading like 5th and 6th grade books right now. He's 8. He's in second grade. It's because of the vocabulary that comes by way of Bible quizzing. And then reading the words, when you're reading the old English style of a King James Version Bible, and then you pick up a second or third grade book, and then that's easy. That's cake compared to, right? So, but that BQ Learn app I meant to bring his Kindle up here today, and I didn't. But one of the things it does is it has the whole verse, and then you hit a little arrow, and it starts to remove some letters. Okay, just a few letters at a time. And then when you get to the last star of memorizing it, there are no letters on the page, and they've retained it. They're ready. And so we have him do about 3 or 4 repetitions on each star. So he's doing that verse a good 50 to 60 times by the time he's ready to quote it. It's not saying, hey, quote me this verse 50 or 60 times. He's doing it 50 or 60 times by way of using these the other tool that exists. So that app is phenomenal. It has some other things that are a part of it, but not for the memorization, really. Bring the verse to life. I talked about different learners. The other night I was sitting at the kitchen table with Jackson. Megan had been working with him, and then we kind of handed off because we got too involved. You got to share duties, and you got to change. One verse she may teach him better, and the next verse I might. It just depends. So we handed off kids, and she was doing something else. So I was sitting across the kitchen table from Jackson, and he just wasn't getting the verse. And so I just began to put goofy actions to it. It's silly. It made no sense with the verse, what I was doing for the most part. But it worked because I got his attention. So you got to get your kids' attention, okay? And whatever it takes to get their attention, you got to be willing to do it. You got to be willing to make a fool of yourself for your kid. And so, coach, you got to be willing to make a fool of yourself for your team. And so, whether it be senior quizzers, whether it be junior quizzers, you got to do what works. And again, if I mentioned there, if none of those work, if all of those fail, I'm telling you, one combination is going to work for your kids, okay? Something will work, and you got to find it. Don't give up. If a parent comes to you and says they're just not getting it, don't give up. Any kid can do this. I've seen kids with autism do it. I've seen kids, when he was 3, he could not read, and he's learning 20 to 30 verses. It can be done. So when a parent comes to you just exasperated and frustrated and they don't know what to do, try again. Reach out to them, your resources. Say, I've tried everything on that list and it's not working. What do you got? Brainstorm. Pick the brain. Go to the family or the parents, coaches' parents, or whatever it is on Facebook. There's a group that if you're not a part of or your parents aren't a part of, it's a great group to just pass ideas around. I've seen it on there where they're saying, I have this situation and nothing's working. What do you suggest? So utilize the resources. Is it Parents Corner? Is that what it's called on Facebook? Parents Corner and Coaches Corner, thank you. So get them a part of that because it's just great to have a support group. It really is, because quizzing is a marathon. It's a long year. And so to have a support group, so to speak, for a lack of a better way to put it, it's just nice to have. To know that you're not alone. It's beneficial, very beneficial. The next thing we do as a part of memorization is we quote the verse backward. Why do you do that? Well, to get to the last word, he's quoting through the verse again. So he'll usually quote through the verse in his head, give us the last word next to last word, quote through the verse again, get to the third from last, fourth from last. So you see the repetition that's there? And he thinks it's cool that he just said a verse backward. Gets a little frustrated sometimes. That happens. But it works. It works. And then last, we really make sure that they get what they memorized. We talk about introducing the verse and talk maybe about some words, but we don't always get into the content of the verse, the meat of the matter, until the end. Now you know it. What do you know? How did that build from the verse before? Are there some indicators from the verse before? And what is the story continuing? Is it a new thought? Who are they talking to? Who's involved? And so we really make sure that the verse is understood. Any questions on memorization or any comments or anything that you want mentioned or reiterated or anything? Okay. Reviewing. I said it earlier, when they sit down for that 5 minutes and memorize the verse, it doesn't mean it's stuck. Review is necessary. We've seen kids where, they get all the content memorized, but they couldn't sit there and quote you a thing. Because they've lost it, because they've not gone over and over and over. There's nothing replaces repetition. And that's what review is. But it's doing repetition in different ways, and then it's focusing on specific parts of the verse, right? So make sure that your senior quizzers have methods to their review, that your parents know what they're doing in review, because if you got a new parent and you talk about reviewing and then you talk about flashcards or charting, or they'll look at you all kind of confused, well, what do I do with that? What's charting, right? So those types of things, you got to make sure that they're aware. But the way we do it is, and this may seem extreme, and we just started this last year, probably the latter half of last year is really when we got really moving in this direction. And it works, because the last half of last year was the greatest stretch run I have seen him quiz in the 4 years he's been involved. We had 4 straight tournaments where he was up over 100 points, and just, he was on, he was locked in because his recall was there, because every verse had been quoted over and over and over. But we do all material quoted every day until we hit the 75 to 100 mark. And when we hit that, and we do it out of order using flashcards, okay? So when we get over 75, we try to cover all the material over a 2 to 3 day span. We put the songs on in the car again, so you can use it to memorize, you can use it to review. Aiden doesn't like to sing very much. He doesn't. But the verses, he's still hearing them if they're on in the car. Quiz questions. Increase them as the year goes. The more and more material you have, increase the questions. There's nothing that will get them more comfortable